Welcome back to our third episode. In today's episode, we explore the topic of active support and person-centered approach. What is it and how do you do it?
Hi, it's Karen and Rick with Just Like Family Home Care. Do your parents need more care than you can give? We're here to help. We offer 24-hour premium care with a consistent helper.
Our home care services include transportation, personal care, housekeeping, and even overnight and dementia care.
At Just Like Family, we focus on relationships, ensuring your loved one is matched with someone perfect for them. We can help you navigate the aging journey and change your life. Learn more and go to justlikefamily.ca.
Before I get into today's episode, I want to make a disclaimer that not all of the approaches or techniques will work for everyone, and they are simply ideas or tips and tricks. They are recommendations, and as we will get into, approaches and techniques can be tailored to be person-specific, and active support can look differently for every person. Now let's get started into today's episode. What is person-centered care and what is active support? Person-centered approach is essentially just a term that means the caregiver is focused on providing individualized care to meet the needs of that specific person's preferences, their needs, and their abilities. We are using techniques and supporting the individual based on their individual abilities. We are taking their personality into consideration and actively ensuring that we are involving the person that we are caring for in their own decisions. The goal with both active support and person-centered approach is to provide choice and autonomy. We respect the person's cultural and religious beliefs and their preferences while encouraging that person to be as independent as possible. We consider their physical, emotional, social well-being rather than just only focusing on their medical or physical condition. Person-centered approach means that we involve that person with making decisions and actions, and this includes the little decisions such as which shirt they want to wear, or it could be offering them a little spoon versus a big spoon for their soup. It can be very subtle actions, and these will vary for all the people that we support. The main goal of active support is to empower this person to do as much as they can for themselves, and the caregiver is there to support the right level of support. The purpose is to be able to enhance their quality of life by increasing opportunities for them to engage, which also allows us to spend time with them and building that key relationship piece. Now, you may have noticed that I said the caregiver is there to support with the right level of support. And what I mean by that is that there's different types of support that a caregiver can provide. It means that we are offering graded assistance. What I mean by that is that there is a spectrum or level of assistance that a caregiver can offer, such as a full prompt. This looks like putting your hand right over top of another person's hand and assisting them with that task. Then we have partial physical, and this is where a caregiver provides a gentle or partial gentle touch where they are kind of more so guiding. And then we have a gesture, which is kind of like a point, or you're gesturing to assist with something or assisting them, or a gesture to prompt them to do something. Then we have verbal prompting and cueing, and we have visual reminders. For example, I once had a dementia client and I ended up printing a stop sign and posting it right above the door handle. And then what ended up happening was that this visual prompt ended up being very beneficial in providing a gentle prompt or a gentle visual reminder for that person to stop leaving the house. It was more so because we didn't want this person to leave the house unattended. And so having that stop sign ended up being a visual reminder to, hey, stop, we're not leaving the house yet. Or maybe you have to wait for your caregiver, or whatever the situation is, but sometimes a visual reminder can be very beneficial for people. Active support is also about encouraging them to participate in the community and being creative in our ways to assist them in being part of that community. It's not uncommon for our people to refuse to do outings or activities, and Eventually, they just stop doing the activities that they once loved. So how can we approach this with active support? We can offer a preferred activity if it's possible, and we can make things more fun. Make the activity seem less like a task or demand and make it more fun. So active support is about building skills, promoting their independence and their confidence. We want them to be able to do as much as they can on their own within their capabilities and abilities. This could also look like adapting activities for them so that it's easier for them to complete. Active support also requires the caregiver to be quite creative in their approaches and their techniques in providing that support. So, what are some examples of person-centered and active support? First example I have is personal care. So when we're talking about personal care, the personal-centered approach could look like asking if the person wants to do their shower now or later. Perhaps it is letting them choose their own clothes, which we can adapt. As we know, some of our people have a hard time making decisions, and offering choices can sometimes actually be too much. So if this is the case, this may mean that having most of their clothes picked out by the caregiver, but having them pick out, which socks they want to wear for the day, instead of asking them to pick out their whole outfit. So what we're doing here is we're still offering them the choice to make a decision that's participating in their own life, but it's not overwhelming. It's not asking them to do their whole outfit. The active support approach for personal care would look like handing that person a washcloth for their face instead of the caregiver physically doing it for them. So perhaps your person has limited dexterity and does not have the full ability or capability to wash their face completely on their own. But it is still important that we offer them to be able to do it themselves, and then the caregiver goes in and completes the task. So what I mean by this is that you allow your person to wash their face as best as they can, and then the caregiver goes in and finishes the task after assisting them. This allows them to have the opportunity to do it themselves. Active support can also look like offering them their own toothbrush and guiding their hand with a partial physical assistance or hand-over-hand assistance rather than the caregiver brushing their teeth for them. Now, obviously, these examples can be tailored to fit your client and your approach. Now, not everybody needs to have their teeth brushed for them, but these are just simply examples. The next area that we can talk about is mealtime. Caregivers are able to provide meal prepping assistance. Now, instead of having the caregiver grab all of the items from their kitchen drawer, you may want to include your client in this and ask them to grab a spoon or a plate. Now, the goal here is to have them engaged, even if they are little tasks, even when it is less time consuming for you to just do it on your own. However, it is important to remember that as caregivers, we are working on their time. And if it takes an extra 45 seconds to complete a task so that we have them engaged and participate, that 45 seconds is beneficial and has a greater impact on their quality of life. In terms of person-centered approach, this could look like maybe offering a choice of what they want for lunch with respect to their dietary preferences. When it comes to active support during mealtime, this can also look like having your person assist with grabbing a placemat. Maybe your person struggles using utensils, so in this case, active support could look like having the caregiver offer to use a different set of cutlery that is easier for them to hold, if that's possible, if that person is still able to use utensils. Now, active support would also be providing hand-over-hand support to assist them in holding a cup or their cutlery of choice, rather than the caregiver doing all the work themselves. The idea here is to include the person in the activities and assist with providing as much independence as possible, even though the caregiver is having to do a portion of that activity. The idea here behind active support is to include the person in the activities and assist them while providing them with as much independence as possible. We can break down activities into smaller steps. So, for example, maybe you are baking cookies. As a caregiver, you're not going to ask your person to go ahead and bake cookies and you just sit there and watch. The caregiver would offer a single step out of that entire task of baking cookies, which could be asking them to pour the flour into the bowl or assisting them in doing that one step. This is adaptive and active support care. The next example I have for you is household chores. Person-centered approach to household chores could look like following that person's cleaning routine. Perhaps they have certain items that they don't want in the dryer. An example of active support in terms of household chores could look like a caregiver picking up a clothing item and handing it to their person for them to put in the laundry basket. This involves that person and has them participating in their own life. I have a few other ways you can incorporate active support and person-centered approach in everyday care. The first one I have for you today is providing options, but it's also important that we don't offer too many options. Sometimes it's best to only offer 2 options, and in some certain scenarios or cases, it's almost better to not provide any options at all. Sometimes people get very confused when there's even 2 options, so this would be situation and client dependent, but providing options is a great way to have somebody active in their own life. A lot of our clients also watch TV, so if your person is able to be focused on watching TV, the caregiver can be engaged with them by having a discussion based on the topic or something related to what they're watching in between commercials. You are actively engaging them throughout the day and having them participate with you, rather than just sitting there watching TV. We can still participate and have a conversation and provide support even though you're just watching TV. A really simple way to provide active support is to just talk to the person that you're caring for and telling them everything that you're doing throughout the day. So this could look like you're about to assist with a shower and you're telling them that you're going to grab a cloth, you're going to wash the cloth, you're going to wash their back, and then you complete the step rather than just going in and not saying anything verbally. This is a person-dependent situation, but even just providing that verbal support of what you're going to do when providing personal care can make a big difference in how people respond. I've seen this in terms of dementia and autism, where sometimes they just want to be spoken to and they just want to know what you're doing. It allows them to feel participated in how you are caring for them. Involving them in conversations, even though they may be one-sided, is still very important. Okay, so let's talk about a scenario here. Let's say you have a person who is required to complete exercises. The caregiver who is there to support them should be providing active support, and that might look like doing the exercise with their person rather than just asking them to complete the activity. So maybe this looks like the caregiver is sitting in a chair next to their person and having the caregiver do the activity or the exercise with the client. Maybe this means that the caregiver is completing the activity first. Maybe this means that the caregiver and the person is taking turns. So I've been in situations where it's beneficial for the caregiver to go in and do the exercise first. So let's say the caregiver goes in, they do 10 reps, they say, okay, I'm done, now it's your turn. And then that way you're kind of making it a 2-sided exercise. It's you're involving the other person while the caregiver is also being involved, and that makes them more likely to be willing to participate in doing the activity. So active support can look like the caregiver is grabbing a chair, completing the exercise themselves with the caregiver, and this makes them feel less alone, and it makes it feel less like a demand or a task if the caregiver is actually doing it with their person rather than just having the person complete their exercises. Active support is about having the caregiver be creative in their approaches so that we can best support them. Person-centered care and active support can look like shared decision-making between you and your person, including even just a little decisions of everyday tasks and activities. So if we go back to the exercise example, maybe your person has an exercise program and they have a few exercises that need to be completed. The caregiver could offer the exercise A or B, or modify the same exercise with another option. So sometimes there are multiple options or ways to do the exact same activity. So this could be something very simple, such as maybe it's an activity or an exercise where the person has to simply lift their legs to a 90-degree angle, let's say 10 reps a day. Very simple exercise. Offer different ways to complete the same exercise or modify that exercise in a way that is still similar to that initial exercise. Oftentimes, there are multiple options or ways to complete the same exercise. It's just up to the caregiver to kind of be creative in how they're approaching that task or that exercise. All right, that is what I have for you today. As a wrap up to today's discussion, we explored what active support and person-centered care is and how caregivers can apply them to daily tasks, whether it's personal care, mealtime, household chores, or engaging them in meaningful activities. As caregivers, our role is to be flexible, creative, and patient, adapting our support to each individual needs and abilities. It's not about doing things for them, but with them. At the end of the day, small actions make a big difference. When we slow down, when we get creative and engage with the person we're supporting, we're not just helping with the task, we're also building their confidence, independence, and stronger connections. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe or share this episode with someone you think might benefit. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode.